Hello and welcome to Commodity Champions. I'm Manisha Gupta. Well, 2024 has been a year that has seen gold touch all-time highs. The yellow metal has been on a golden run despite the dollar strengthening following Donald Trump's victory in the recent U.S. elections. Well, this as geopolitical tensions and increased buying by global central banks as well as surge in ETF buying ensured that demand for the safe haven metal remains strong. Worries of USA's debt burden rising after Trump becomes US president in January has only bolstered demand for gold. So how long will this golden run continue? To discuss that and more, I am now joined by World Gold Council CEO David Tait. David, hi. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. The narrative in the last few months has been that even if the dollar index gains, we have seen gold hold as well. It has come off its all-time highs, but it's holding well on the higher side right now, outperforming various other metals and energy sector for sure. What do you make sense of the price rise that we've seen in this year?
I'm not surprised by that. I think the reaction to the Trump win was somewhat predictable. I would have expected a greater decline in gold as a consequence of it, but it only really came down 5–7%, which I think shows its underlying strength. The reason it's done that, in my honest opinion, is because the world has quickly moved to a situation where it's very debt-focused. And I do believe that the amount of debt that's going to be piled on the US economy, and perhaps those of Europe and the rest of the world as well, is the thing that really underlies the underlying strength of gold. I think you're about to see a situation where the inflationary impact of any tariffs and that spending in the United States starts to draw the debt burden into sharp focus, which I think is only going to support gold. And I think that's the reason why it's clinging to the highs despite this pressure.
Oh, well, absolutely. David, also the markets are expecting clarity on Trump's tariffs and policies and trade by the first quarter of 2025. How would you look at the next few quarters in the light of that? Also, how are you expecting Trump's policies to impact gold demand and prices on ground?
Well, I think over the next 2 months, a lot will become clear. I think we're all aware of that. There's an awful lot of hyperbole during an election campaign, which may or may not come true. But he seems rather determined and has a huge mandate. So on the assumption that we get tariffs, it's likely to be inflationary. It is and can be regarded as a consumer purchase tax, but at the same time, it's very unlikely not to translate into inflation in the country. At the same time, he's instilling tax cuts and further adding to what is a $35 trillion deficit to the tune of maybe getting it up to $42 trillion. Now, that in of itself is going to steepen yield curves. It's going to make investors nervy, and that steepening the yield curve is going to put the debt burden on the US economy up to somewhere close to $1 trillion in its own right. I think that will unnerve people. Whether it'll unnerve the treasury market in the United States or the bond markets throughout the world remains to be seen, but I think it will happen. And as a consequence of that, I expect growth in the gold price, I expect appreciation in the gold price, and I expect it to come from most quarters, not least the central banks of the world, those outside who would like to remain outside the US sphere of influence. I expect to continue buying. I think they've sat beneath the price. I don't think they chase it actively, but I expect them to continue to do this. And when you tie all that, that geoeconomic story to the geopolitical story that we are being confronted with at the moment, I think the gold price can only go higher.
All right. Geoeconomics and geopolitics, when it comes together, as you said, the gold prices will go higher. And it has in this year, hasn't it, David? Not just in the US dollar terms, but in India, in Australia, in China, in Europe. We've seen gold make all-time highs in all of these countries as well. So with that, what's your sense on physical buying, jewelry buying, even digital buying is on a surge right now? How are you looking at all of these avenues?
I think, firstly, jewelry. I think the jewelry demand in India over the course of the last few quarters, in the light of a very strong and ever-appreciating gold price, has done remarkably well. I think the duty cut helped. I think that made a difference to people. I think the enthusiasm towards gold in India is legendary anyway. I don't think you're going to shatter that overnight. But I was personally surprised by its resilience given the ever increasing price. I think, people are educated. They understand the pressures in the world. They understand the pressures on fiat currencies, and they feel ever more strongly that holding gold in whatever form, whether it's jewelry or otherwise, depending on your perspective, is the way to go forward. Gold digitalization, I believe, should be regulated in India, as it should be throughout the rest of the world, to protect consumers and to add a sense of formalization to the industry. I think that's a very important thing going forward, and I hope that the authorities take note and understand this. I'm sure they understand it, but act on this going forward. I think in the broader picture across the globe, we are working very hard to digitalize both the gold ecosystem throughout the world, which in many respects, despite the fact it works well, is somewhat old-fashioned. And then also work towards a situation where we can actually digitalize physical gold such that it can take its place alongside other financial assets, equivalent financial assets, which largely speaking are already very transparent, very fluid, carry fewer risks than the gold market does. So I expect the gold market over time, not just in India, but across the rest of the world, to be opened up by digitalization, and that will attract many people who have hitherto not traded gold into this market, such as asset managers who have hitherto gone and traded somewhere else.
David, I was reading a World Gold Council report which says that AI is driving industrial gold demand. I mean, we have seen precious metals, industrial metals actually start getting used into EVs and the whole renewable story that seems to be playing out right now. How are you looking at gold within the industrial sense of it? And also, we talk about traceability in different areas. Is gold looking at that as well?
Yes, AI and gold in technology is a constant demand, and it has been increasing, which we have apportioned to the growth in AI. You've obviously seen the demand for NVIDIA chips as an example. There is a proportion of that technology which supports gold demand. It is not a large component, but it has been increasing, and I expect that to be persistent. From a gold supply chain and integrity perspective, we are doing an awful lot of work. And that is, I think, the cornerstone of a future trusted gold market. All the capital implications and all the costs of trading and being part of the formal global gold market are inhibited to some extent by a lack of trust relative to other asset classes, I should say. And we are hard at work introducing a global database for responsibly sourced gold. It's been around now since 2022. All mine miners, as an example, all large-scale miners, now put their new production into this database. The LBMA is a co-author of this policy and have all their banks and logistics and refiners on this database now, and it's growing hand over fist. My hope at some point is this database becomes so ubiquitous and well known to everybody in the world, both investor and person in the street, that it becomes a point where it's unthinkable to buy gold without checking its provenance and authenticity. We hope that this database will grow to such an extent that if you sit outside this database or hold gold outside this database at some point, your market for reselling it will slowly decline. And as a consequence, we will be raising the standards of gold supply and gold integrity hand over fist. We've had buy-in from all over the world, and I believe it's only on a growth course.
Well, that's good to know. David, also, I do understand that even as World Gold Council doesn't give a call on the prices of gold, but you do believe that the gold prices will be bullish from here on as well. So how bullish do you think that the prices can go on from here? Is it going to be a stronger direction? Because most of the global banks, brokerages, Wall Street guys have all said that the gold will be headed higher. $3,000 announced plus kind of levels is what we see coming in for 2025 as well.
Yes, I mean, anything I quote from a price perspective would obviously be my own. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. But I do think when you add up the geoeconomic, which is, despite inflation, I think people will focus on the debt burden that comes from that inflation, not inflation in its own right, I think that will be gold bullish. If you focus on the geopolitics, I think anybody will see that there is a necessity for a safe haven out there. And I believe this is it. And I believe even central banks are viewing it that way. That's why they're in it, which is gold positive. Then if you view, like I said, the major pivots in the rest of the world are the three economies I just mentioned, which are Japan, China, and India, which are essentially got such enormous potential from gold, investment buying potential, I should say, that we cannot ignore it. And they are liberalizing their economies. And lastly, but not least, is the digitalization process that we are running, which will, over time, over the course of the next couple of years, open the gold market to asset managers who have hitherto not been able to trade gold. Now, taken together, it's very hard for me not to see a very positive outlook for gold. And I would expect to see gold top 3,000 at some point next year without any trouble at all.
All right. So you basically are alluding to the fact that, well, 3,000 in 2025 is not going to be such a big move. It really is very strong gains that we already have seen in case of gold prices. And this year itself, almost $600 to $700 an ounce of a run-up is what we've done in 2024. A phenomenal year where we've seen all-time highs, not just in gold, but on silver as well. David, thank you so much for joining us here at CNBC India with your thoughts on what the gold prices could do going ahead and, of course, the overall economy there. Well, on that note, it's time for a short break. But up next, we are joined by Executive Director of the C. Krishnam Chetty Group, Chaitanya Kotha, as we turn the focus to India's jewelry business. Stay tuned. I'll be back in a minute. Welcome back, and you're watching Commodity Champions. We now shift focus to gold jewelry, and joining us now to discuss that and more is Chaitanya Kotha. He's Executive Director at the C. Krishna Chetty Group. Thank you so much for joining us, Chaitanya. And, 2024 has been a year of all sorts where we've seen strong numbers. And one would have thought that with all-time high gold prices, you perhaps could see a bit of a slowdown come in for jewelry buying. But that clearly hasn't happened, not to the extent that people perhaps were believing. What has been your sense when you look back at this year and the kind of jewelry trends that we've seen within India?
Hi. So honestly, even though the prices have increased significantly, I think that the whole perception of weddings has not really changed, and it's only been increasing and increasing. So if you look back in this whole year, there's been close to 4.8 million weddings that have happened in the year, and I think that has generated close to 5 lakh crores across categories. I think jewelry has been a very important aspect, and I think everyone will still continue to be strong on that. So it's been only increasing.
Oh, well, absolutely. As David was telling us, that gold buying in India is legendary, and it's not going to go away anytime soon with the kind of buying that we do. Chaitanya also talked to us about, changing trends within India. We do talk about responsible buying. We've spoken about sustainability. Another major trend that came back into this year has been about lab-grown buying. How have you seen that pick up into the market? You are a player within that category as well.
So I think there's been definitely a two-part area. So I think customers who keep buying natural jewelry will always continue to buy natural jewelry, as it's a very good investment. The lab-grown is a more younger audience who today can afford stuff on their own. And I think that has been a fantastic space, and we've been focusing on that area as well. So we've been seeing a pretty good shift from the younger audience who are now able to afford higher diamonds through in this.
Since you did speak about the natural diamonds, I do want to have a question on that as well. We've seen prices decline from its highs in this year. Currently, this seems to be stabilizing. The months of October and November actually saw a bit of a gain coming into the prices also. One, how would you look at prices, and how would you look at the Indian penetration? Because I do know that it was 2% in 2015, 11% people own diamonds right now. What is the kind of growth that we're looking into this one?
So I think diamonds is, when you look at the diamonds, it's more aspirational as well. So you need to be able to look at it at a longer period of time. It's not 6 months or 1 year. You should look at it from the horizon of 5 years or more. And there will always be an appreciation, especially in diamonds that are much bigger in size. Today, they're becoming auction quality, where such large diamonds from 5 carat, 10 carat, 15 carat, even 20 carats are now only appreciating. So I think that's going to hold strong, and I think natural will always be there to stay, and it'll only appreciate.
Chaitanya, I do understand that you are a fifth or a sixth generation within your business?
Sixth generation.
Sixth. How would you
Yes,
say
I'm the
business
sixth
in
generation.
India? Yeah, Chaitanya, how would you say business has changed, and what is the newness that you brought in, and what are the changes that you see in this year? How prepared are you now for 2025?
So our whole objective for 2025 is all about speed and efficiency, where we are making sure that we are able to manufacture our jewelry a lot more effectively, as well as keep up with the styles that are going on around the world. Today, if you look internationally, the entire fashion sense has completely changed, and we are staying as ahead as we can. And so that's something that we've been, doing at the company as well.
Chaitanya, when you say that, what do you mean? Because, I do understand that jewelry as a segment really seems to be opening up, because we've seen corporates come into this. Jewelry is now a segment that most people want to be part of, because they do believe that going forward, this is an area that can give you better profits and the sales would continue higher. So when you talk about efficiency, what way are you working towards this?
So as we mentioned earlier, the amount of time to take into manufacture is something that we're improving. So today, if you see the India of today, who's fairly young, they all want things extremely urgently, within a couple of weeks. So we're improving the efficiency from that aspect, as well as even making sure that our entire pipeline is very well integrated.
Chaitanya, the other thing clearly is, over the years, another thing that has changed is self-purchases. Yes, women always had a say in what they wanted to wear and buy, but self-purchase clearly seems to be going higher. And the other part of the story clearly is the men's jewelry, which really seems to be picking up. Almost everybody that I seem to be talking within the jewelry as a sector talks about men's jewelry doing very well. How are you looking at both of these categories?
So I think men's jewelry is something that's been an area of interest, because I think today all men today are spending a lot of effort on making sure they accessorize. And jewelry as an industry has never had enough options for men. And so we're playing around with different alloys, different metals, different styles, making sure that we accessorize really well. So even if you see that, from diamonds to gemstones to even, black diamonds is something that would be an area of interest for men. And we are trying to stay up again there as well.
Talk to us about Crash.Club. What really is that, and what are you doing via that?
So we're launching a new line for men again, and it's a very aspirational space. And we're doing something which basically connects with, with each individual style. We've gone from someone who's an introvert to an extrovert. We have everything for them, and that's something that we're doing for men.
You spoke about black diamonds and you spoke about gemstones. How easily accessible is this? Would you say Indian market is mature to buy this, or is it more about royalty that we are talking about now?
No, I think that gemstones have always been available, and good quality gemstones is something that people are now aware of, and they actually would like that. As far as the black diamonds go, it's just more from a fashion aspect. It's not really that expensive unless you go really, really high size. And we're also experimenting with cubic zircons and different stones which are manufactured in the lab to help with the affordability, as well as access to doing things a lot more in a lot more scale.
Chaitanya, is the natural diamond industry now talking to the lab-grown industry? Is there a sense that we see a more maturity as we get into 2025?
Oh, yes. I think people today are very well versed. I think they know a lot more than all of us. There's enough information online, and I think that they know exactly the process of manufacturing it, where it comes from, how to cut it. Everything is well known. So which makes it a lot easier, because now I think that educational aspect now is not really as important in terms of people not knowing about it. So I think people are very, very well informed as of now. And so
what about the prices?
A lot more informed as well.
Okay. What about the prices really? Because the lab growns are at a 70 to 80% lower cost of naturals. Is the correction done? A lot of people were perhaps just selling inventory into the market, trying to get out of the space. That also led to a lot of price decline. Is the industry now settling down?
I think it's fairly, it will settle down. I think lab grown is not really going to be a big effect. If you look at it from our perspective, the way we see it is actually pushing boundaries. So I don't think it's a competition to natural. I think it's just an addition to the natural business. I don't think it's a replacement. I don't think lab grown will ever be a replacement for natural diamonds. So I think it's only going to be a space of addition and really playing around with things that we can't do natural.
Chaitanya, there also is a report coming in today that this was yesterday that De Beers cut rough diamond prices in the latest side by 10 to 15%. I mean, the timing, would you say, is slightly not very right? Because this is a time when the market was just picking up, the prices were going higher, and this is the holiday season abroad, people start to buy. And when you hear a news like De Beers cutting diamond prices by 10 to 15%, doesn't do well for the trade, does it?
So I think it's actually only certain categories and certain sizes. It's not really across the board. So I think that when we actually look at it specifically in each area, that's where the prices have dropped. It's not dropped across the board. And I think that the higher qualities will only appreciate as time goes on.
Okay, so going forward in this wedding season with 4.8 million weddings within India, and most of those big fat weddings actually happen in the month of December rather than other months, what is the kind of sales that the industry really is looking for this month?
I think that there's significant increase. I think that there's so much scope because I think across India, like I said, across categories, there's such a huge increase of weddings. I think that it'll only be a lot better than 2024 for sure. At least a 15% is what I've seen. That would be an increase in this month alone.
All right. So an interesting space and good profits, prices going higher, and so is the demand. Chaitanya Kotha, thank you so much for joining us and taking us through all the pattern trends that are in the jewelry market right now. But with that, that's all the time that we have on Commodity Champions. Thank you for watching.